Fix our schools. Those three words driving much of what you see on CNN every Monday during this hour, because as America's children return to school, CNN has a mission to document the nation's education crisis. Most importantly, we are shining a light on success stories that can empower us to offer our children so much more than what they are getting right now. Today, our focus is on the empowered parent, things you can do to improve your child's education. And our guest is going to talk about how to get the most out of a, potentially tricky engagement here. The conference with the child's teacher. Shannon Flounnory is principal at Stonewall Tell Elementary School. Shannon, good of you to be here with us.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Tony.
Walk us through this. When we walk into that classroom for that parent-teacher conference, you know, it can be a little anxious.
It can.
Right? A little, anxious moments here. Should we expect as parents that the teacher will lead that conversation, or are we expected to lead that conversation with our child's teacher?
Well, I think for the most part, it is the expectation that the teachers will, in fact,
good, because that's what I'm thinking when I okay.
Right. When parents come in, they're looking at teachers for answers. However, there are some things that parents need to be aware of going into that conference specifically. But I do think that it is incumbent upon us as educators to make sure we provide parents prior to the conference certain information.
Yeah.
We actually become educational partners with home. So when we provide parents with information, that information should be very specific in terms of what our curriculum is. At the end of this particular marking period, I expect your child to master what specific standards. What do I expect of them? And we have to be very, very clear about that.
Now, let me pick up on that note you just mentioned a moment ago. You mentioned to me that what we want here is a positive homeschool relationship.
Correct.
You touched on it just a second ago. Give me a little more detail on that.
Yeah, I think we've learned from the entire effective school research from decades ago that there is a statistically significant relationship between home community relations and student achievement. Additionally, core proposition number 1 for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards says that teachers are committed to students and their learning. So in order to create that homeschool relationship, we are sharing with parents what we have found about students. So when we call them in, we don't always just want to call them in just because there's something not happening with their child, either academically or behaviorally. Often, traditionally, if you get a call from the teacher, oh my God, I got that call from the teacher, I have to conference, what have you done? So we have to put ourselves in positions such that when we make that call to the parent and invite them in for a conference, we want to share good things as well as not so good things to make sure that we have that ongoing relationship.
Love it. So one of the questions that the parent should be prepared to answer is, what motivates your child? And why is that an important question? And what is the teacher looking for in asking that question? What kind of feedback?
Okay. Well, specifically, parents know their children a lot more than we do as educators because they've given birth to them, they have raised them. But while the child is with us, we become their parents. So we are looking for information in terms of, if I have certain practices in my classroom, if I am a stern disciplinarian, that may work for 95% of the kids. What about that one child who that will just shut down if I am overly firm with that child? We need to know information. So I may be firm, but with that child, I may have to address him or her in a little different manner. So this is why we have to establish those relationships, so we know when you're providing us with information.
You also tell us that we should, as parents, be open to surprises in the conference process and be open to the conversation going in different areas than you might have anticipated.
That is correct. Even though we come with a preconceptualized idea of these are the things that we want to ask in this particular conference, we don't want to limit ourselves in a box, because in that conversation there may actually be situations that the conference leads us into other areas, and the parent will say, oh, I had no idea. Or sometimes it works just the opposite. Parents will provide us with information, and we may say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. This will be a better way to meet that child's needs. So it is an exchange of information.
Here's the moment when the conference can go a little sideways, and I want you to help us, guide us into making sure the conference stays on track. The parent says something like, are there any deficiencies in my child's learning experience here? Are we having any problems with my child meeting core lesson curriculum expectations? And how do we handle the moment when the teacher says, well, there is this matter of?
Yes, that can be somewhat of a sensitive issue. No one wants to hear that their child is struggling academically, especially if it's to the point where the implications may imply specific services that may lead to implications of special education. And we know that there's an over-identification of special education, especially amongst African-American males.
Right.
So again, we go back to that relationship building. Once parents, it's been my experience that once parents understand that you want, similar to them, what's best for their child, it's a lot easy to get that point over in a very tactful manner. Then every time that you hear from me as a teacher, I'm talking about something negative with my child. So again, it is based upon pre-established relationships. I can tell you, your child is having some issues, here's what's happening, but more specifically, what are we doing as educators to be able to fill those gaps? That's the important part, when parents feel that we are doing our part and we are educational partners.
And we've covered a lot of territory here. At a minimum, how much time should we anticipate in this parent-teacher conference setting to get all of this material covered? I mean, come on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And there is not a general guideline for that. It just depends on the nature of the conference, whether the conference is for the purpose of discussing disciplinary concerns or academic concerns. It is very child-specific, to be honest, Tony.
Okay.